you look at this and the irony, of course, is that, yes, it's complicated by Apple standards, but if you were to look elsewhere, there's like 10 million other options that you could pick. So from Android devices, etc., you could get really lost in this. I do want to start out by saying that this is a stark contrast to, say, when I started with the iPhone back in 2010, basically there was one option, the iPhone 4. There was only one color, and the only options you had were storage. So it was very simple. And the other thing that I also would suggest is that, yes, in the current lineup, as you can see here, there's like previous models that they're offering, but there was a previous model that year, the 3GS, but the year-on-year upgrade was so massive that you realistically wouldn't be going for the previous year's model unless you were really wanting to save cash. So, whereas what we're looking at here, and this is the point we want to start out with the 13 lineup, is that all of these are really capable. All of these will probably last 5 years if you bought them today. So where do you begin, and how do you know what to pick, especially if you're not as discerning about specific features or whatever it is that you want to do? Maybe I'll start with you, Steve. I know you jumped in with your selection. So what did you get, and what did you why was the selection?
Well, if we're looking at phones, okay, I've gone with an iPhone 13 in 2021. Look, overall, it's a fantastic phone, and I'm really very happy with it. But I thought there's a few things that I would have thought that Apple could have got right. Maybe they couldn't. One is the weight. It is heavy. Okay, it's heavy. Size isn't the issue, but the weight is. The other thing is there's no LED notification button or charge button. And then probably the third thing is that we've got, what's that thing called?
Oh, the Lightning port.
The Lightning port, not a USB-C. And when you get a MacBook Pro these days, it's got USB-C.
Yep.
So...
And iPads as well.
And iPads as well. So for me, they're probably three things that you'd say maybe on their own would each be trivial. But, and there's a fourth, which is no fingerprint sensor to open. Have to go with a facial. So if you don't mind that stuff, you're going to love this phone because it's got a great camera, and I have to say the way it integrates in a daily workflow is spectacular. But I find those four things just on a day-to-day basis functionally annoying.
Absolutely, yeah. But would you say it's sort of like a good mid-tier, well, not mid-tier, mid-tier for the top end of the range?
Jeez, you give Tim Cook a heart attack. Look, I think if you're that way inclined for a big, heavy phone, you might as well go the Pro. If you wanted a lighter weight phone that was probably more reasonably priced, maybe the Mini. I mean, it's strange, and now I'm not trying to knock this phone at the moment. I've just knocked it on the four things that I hate, but it is stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
It is stuck in the middle. I think potentially for most people, the Mini or the Pro would probably be more appropriate.
Indeed, I might actually speak to that a little bit. I'm a bit complicated because I've actually got this kind of thing going on at the moment where my main phone is on a 2-year cadence, but I've also been now starting to buy a secondary phone to be a second camera, because obviously we've got two cameras. We need this setup, you know. So I actually picked up the 13 Mini this year in the sort of as the second device. It's not the primary device that I use. I actually. It's funny, it makes me feel like it's like the iPhone 4 because of the size, but you're getting the fact that it's virtually all screen. Yeah. It's nice having that sort of one-handed feel to it, which is ironic because, my main phone is actually the 12 Pro Max, which is like nice and big, and I do that because I primarily use it as a computing device.
You picked up 0.5 and it doesn't have a left hand or right hand keypad.
Oh, yeah, of course, when it's got a screen that big.
When it's got a screen that big. So there's number 5. Anyway, nitpicking, but they all add up.
Yeah, absolutely. But like for me, it's quite suitable for that secondary camera that I need it for this sort of purpose. Obviously, I wouldn't buy a second phone if I wasn't using it for this reason. I did have an iPhone 11 before. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I actually found this mini is actually really good. It's not my choice because it's too small for using it as a primary computing device.
Yeah.
But if you were a, say, casual user who would actually use it more like a phone, it's actually a great option. It also happens to be the cheapest option of the high end. So, it's well recommended, and plus they improved the battery life compared to last year. So it's a good thing. But yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, I was just going to add to that. Sadly, this adds to my work life.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't integrate that well with my leisure life.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the real issue with it.
Absolutely. So there you go. So I'm sort of going 12 Pro Max primary phone for everyday use, and I've got the 13 Mini for the secondary camera and a couple of other things.
The Mini's a very good looking phone.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. Now, I did just want to touch quickly on some of the other models, because you're wondering, well, there's still other phones, and you said they were all capable, which they are. I'd say that the SE is actually great as I'd hesitate to call it a budget option. I mean, it's still in Australian dollars, $679, so that's not cheap, but considering the functionality, that's actually really, really good value, and you'll get 5 years out of it as well, probably.
Oh, look, it's a sensational phone, as you said, as long as what you're doing with it is not screen oriented.
Yeah.
Or you've got glasses, it'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I referred to the 11 before. I actually think the 11 is actually a decent pick as well, more along the lines of the SE rather than the higher end, mainly because it's the SE but with the newer tech. So the Face ID, dual camera system, but at a lower price, so down at $849, starting at $849. The other thing that I did want to mention is that the 12 is probably the one I wouldn't recommend for anybody at this point, because you might as well just go the 13 at this point. And I do want to mention this because, and hopefully this will work here, assuming. So unless you want a purple phone in this shade, because that's the only iPhone that has that color.
Supply chain issues.
Absolutely. But if we were to pick the iPhone 12, for instance, and I'll just go through this now. The base model iPhone 13 starts at 128 gigs, so the proper comparison is to actually pick that storage option. That's $1279. If you now go to the 13, pick the blue one. That's $1349. So $1279 versus $1349. I think that's a no-brainer. Yes, you're saving what, $70.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a good option.
I think, as you said to me, which I didn't listen, start off at least at 256. It won't make the phone weigh anymore, even if you fill it up.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's what I would think. I think, like, if you can, just get one of the 13 lineup.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the SE or the 11, I think, is what you would go for. I'm sure that they're selling 12s by a rate of knots, but at the same time, I just don't know. It's a curious entry in the lineup. At least they've got I guess they're hitting a price point, and that's all it is.
Look, I guess so, and I think one of the stronger things, though, I would say about the iPhone 13 is, okay, there's that extra weight, but you do get the battery life. So yeah. I've heard the 12 burns its battery pretty quick, so that would be another reason to go for the 13.